what I say to my team all the time is clarity drives action, action drives execution, execution gets you results.
Welcome back to another episode of The Burn. I am Ben Newman, and you know how we do this every single week. We're going to bring you a story of an athlete, an entertainer, an entrepreneur, a business owner, a celebrity, somebody who has helped us understand that why and purpose is not enough. It's that underlying burn that ignites your why and purpose and causes you to show up on the days you don't feel like it, and especially after you win. One of the things that makes our opportunities on The Burn so special is when I have the opportunity to build amazing, deep, meaningful relationships with people in a coaching capacity, but then they end up becoming part of your life. And then you have the opportunity to win together and to grow together and to have our family spend time together and to have a real, deep, meaningful relationship. And I think today in our Burn episode with JD Crowell, that's what you guys are going to feel. That this is far deeper than a coaching relationship. This is a deep, lifelong relationship of growth, challenge, staying uncomfortable, being driven by the burn, being driven by intentional focus, and two individuals that enjoy spending time together to push and challenge each other. And that's the reality of coaching sometimes. And I can share with you, and I'm going to give a little bit more of an introduction here to set the table before I welcome JD. But JD joined our Standard Elite Mastermind group. Now, JD and I had known each other 10 plus years ago through a relationship with the same insurance company that we both represented at one point in time. And then we were reconnected, and he had reached out to me. And he reaches out to me, and I started to learn all of the amazing things that he was doing. He comes and joins our group. And actually and you guys know, a mastermind group for me is 15 people, right? A lot of people have masterminds. It's 300 people. That's an event. It's not a mastermind. In our mastermind, it is deep relationships, similar to our roundtable. It's only 50 members. But JD brought this element of, I think we can be closer in this group. And he challenged all of us to lean in even more in our relationships. So even though you listening may not be part of our Standard Elite Mastermind group, I want to encourage you, lesson number one from JD, and I'm giving it to you from what I learned from him, lean in more in your relationships. And it's amazing what you will find. JD is an example for us of what great discipline in your life means. Now, today for me was my 2,414th straight day doing the unrequired. Many of those unrequired workouts I've had the opportunity to do with JD, which is always fun. JD, as a result of our coaching work, he has started a string. He now is worked out twice a day for 343 straight days, coming up on 1 year. Most people haven't worked out one time. Some people aren't working out enough. They haven't worked out in a long time. And he's worked out twice for 343 straight days. 563 straight days without alcohol. Many people will look at the things JD does professionally, running an amazing family of companies, most notably Responsive Capital Ventures, which you're going to learn a lot about, a organization that our family trusts for our growth. But Responsive Capital has become a brand in and of itself with multiple entities, generating $30 million of revenue, 50 employees, and a real estate portfolio of $150 million. But you know what's most impressive about JD? JD's a husband and a dad before anything else. And I can attest to the truth of that from the conversations that we have and having spent time with his beautiful family. He's a builder by trade, and he's one of those individuals today where this is very important. He actually runs a business day to day. He just doesn't have a good marketing team that puts together great highlight reels that makes it look like he's running a business. He is a real life operator. He is a real life family man, and he is a friend. JD Crowell, welcome to the Burn.
Ben, I'm so happy to be here. I don't even know what to say. That was amazing. I think we should probably just end the show on that note, right? So,
If we could take us back to some of what makes you who you are, because there's so many unique things that are amazing about your story that are going to help everybody listening in terms of the importance of staying in a niche, understanding verticals, being a great teammate, not just a leader, not being a great owner, being a great teammate. But where did a lot of this come from for you? Take us back to childhood. Take us to the stories. Take us to the burn. Take us to your story.
yeah, absolutely. So, for me, I think what's important for the audience to understand, I'm no different than folks listening to this podcast, right? And so, uh, Midwestern, Midwesterner, was born and raised in Indiana, and very blue collar, grew up with very humble beginnings. Both my wife and I did. And so, for me, what you see, who I am today, this has been built, right? Like I wasn't necessarily, God could give me some unique gifts for sure, but I had to take advantage of those unique gifts and work on it and develop it over many decades. And so I always tell folks, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And for me, it was going back to, those roots in Indiana, learned work ethic at a very young age. If anyone that's grew up in the Midwest understands, like if your parents were farmers, you farmed. If they owned a business, you were probably working in the business at a very young age. No different for me. So just being exposed to that early on, I think that is something I attest to and attribute to a lot of my success. It was core values that were instilled in me at a very young age that has definitely served me well over the years of developing myself. And so, growing up in that environment, Indiana is a great place to be raised. But I've always been gifted. God had given me a unique gift of being a visionary. Even at a young age, I was always thinking and looking at things a little bit differently than most people. And so I think that's also important to note. I don't believe that everyone should go and be an entrepreneur. I don't think everyone's built to do it, but I think God had given me that blessing. And so at a very young age, most kids are playing with Legos or playing video games. I wanted to build a business. And so I was able to do some of that in the automotive space, chasing down old antiques and classics. That was my first kind of real business, if you will, outside of lemonade stands and so forth. But when eBay came on, I was able to chase down these old antiques and classics. I could see what they're bringing. I put them on eBay. I was always pretty tech savvy. Made thousands, tens of thousands of dollars doing that. And so parlayed that into my first official business, which was in the automotive industry, where I later grew and scaled that business to 8 figures. Got into subprime lending. Next thing you know, I'm selling that business for my first exit, which got me down to Charleston nearly 10 years ago. So I've always been good with numbers, had that vision, if you will. And yeah, I think it's just I think for me, it's always just been it's always been a pursuit of becoming the best version of myself. So reinvesting myself, coaching with you, those are things that I care deeply about.
This episode of The Burn is brought to you by our dear friends and partners at QLogix. Now, I don't co-sign things I don't believe in, and I believe in John Chiarando and the team at QLogix. He's built multiple 9-figure businesses, real integrity, real character, the kind of guy you want in your corner. But here's what happened. All that expertise, all that knowledge, it was just his. Locked in his head, his decisions, his team, you couldn't access it. So John created QLogix. He basically said, how do I make everything I've built available to people who actually need it? Here's what that looks like. QLogix helps you see the blind spots in your business, the gaps you don't even know you have. You don't know what you don't know. They're your tour guide through that. QLogix helps you build systems that make your business work better, or they ask better questions so you're approaching it in the most effective way. And QLogix has access to a network of businesses and resources, real connections, real synergies that can accelerate what you're building. If any of that resonates, go to Q-Logix, LOGIX.com/Ben. Fill out a form. Their team will research your situation personally, then they'll tell you straight. Can they actually help? Thank you to our friends and partners at QLogix. Make sure you find out more about QLogix and your opportunity to win more with them today.
And you also care deeply about, your people. One of the
Mhm.
things, once again, before we get to the connection and the power of remembering those Midwestern roots, all the way to really the investments in the core of the business is in the Midwest. And so I want to challenge people first. Are you staying connected to your story? I always love saying, what does your story tell you about you? And the power of your story, it tells you so much about yourself, but you lean into it, you own it, that's who you are. Living in Charleston, there's still these amazing Midwestern values, although you've introduced me to so many dear friends, the Kelly Garretts and amazing individuals that are in Charleston. And so there's just amazing people, Donovan Ryder, just these incredible people. So there's wonderful people in Charleston, but your Midwestern roots, they've so tight for you. But there's also these values that you stand on that as an
Mhm.
owner, you've made them part of your messaging. And I'm typically not I'm gonna tell everybody, I'm not a big guy on acronyms. I'm not like a big acronym guy, but I love the stable core values that you all live by. So I think it's important that we all have core values. If you like acronyms, go ahead with acronyms. I actually love this acronym. Maybe one of my favorite acronyms, even though I don't like acronyms normally, but STABLE stands for show up and own it, take action, always growing, be real, lead with humility, and excellence in everything. Why has that been so important for you in being a leader, being a business owner? Many people, they'll bring on a few employees and grow a business. I don't think many people realize getting to 50 employees at the amount of revenue, the assets in the portfolio, those are huge, significant numbers that people dream of. Why is like messaging and core values? Why is that so important to you?
Yeah, so I think it stems back to it starts individually, right? And as a leader, I'm always looking at myself, like what can I do to become the best version of myself and lead by example. And so core values are obviously near and dear to me. The core values that we've developed with our organization are things that I care deeply about, and our team cares deeply about. But for us, the core values ensure that we never drift away from our identity, right? And I'll say that the core values are there for a reason. This isn't a marketing tool. A lot of companies use it for marketing. We use it to run our business and to hold ourselves accountable to our DNA. And so everything that we do, from hiring and firing to making business decisions, are all centered and look through those lenses of those core values. And for our organization, I got to give credit to Josh Koznick. He's an EOS coach. Ben's good friends with Ben as well. He helped us clarify that a little over a year ago. So these are not even that, we've always had those core values, but we didn't really stamp them until about a little over a year ago. When we did that, we had the most growth last year in our organization. And I'm not surprised at all by that, because we put in the work. We got clarity around who are we, who we strive to be, and everything that we do from a decision perspective is put through that lens of those core values. So much that when we give shout outs, we're not just saying, hey, Joe did such a great job with this, renovating this unit. We illustrate that shout out through the lens of a core value. And so we take it to the 10th degree, if you will, as it pertains to the importance of those core values. So it's not just something that sits in your employee handbook, but everyone, all the way down to a cleaner, to the C-suite, to the marketing team, everyone understands what those core values are and why they're important. And that has single-handedly been one of the most transformational things that we've implemented in our business.
I love it. And I love you tying in Josh. Josh, we actually have a recording set for the burn, which is long overdue. He's going to be coming on in the next couple of weeks as well. So everybody stay tuned for that. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because Josh and I have been friends for over 20 years. And this is kind of a great segue into kind of staying in your niche and doing the things that you're great at. Is Josh is one of the top EOS coaches in the world. And a lot of people don't realize, you could read Gino Wickman and the book Traction and you hear EOS, and it's really this popular, popular theme of coaching today. But I mean, you got to be trained, you got to be certified, and there's an actual process for this. Josh is one of the best in the world. That's why we leverage to Josh those EOS opportunities. That's why when you called, like, could I drive different levels of accountability and discipline? Yes, we do that. But he's like the expert in coming in, doing that, building those core values. So stay tuned for that interview for Josh. If anybody needs a connection to Josh, reach out to JD, reach out to myself, and we can make that happen. Now, before we actually do, because it is the perfect segue for staying in a niche, and me saying, even for me, I stay in my niche, I leverage away. I do have to say, core values, messaging, discipline, Indiana football, the Hoosiers, right? I gotta allow you to get your plug here, even though I work for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. On October the 10th, we're gonna play Indiana in Nebraska, in Lincoln. We're probably gonna have to get you there for that game wearing a big N rather than an I, which probably won't happen. But
it'll be the candy stripes. I'll be wearing the candy stripes.
But this I want to give you an opportunity to speak to, because we've had so many conversations about it. Wasn't it amazing for you to see? Now, I got to spend 5 years with Saban in Alabama. I didn't get to work with Cignetti. I got to work with Pete Golding and some of the other coaches that were part of the magical run where everybody said all these coaches came from the Saban tree. But how unique for you to see some of your beliefs, discipline, consistency of messaging show up in what Curt Cignetti did to turn around what many people don't realize is the most losingest football team in the history of college football, and in 24 months turn them into champions based upon messaging and culture and so many things you believe. How exciting was that for you? I got to let you have your Hoosier moment.
I mean, we didn't have a football team 2 years ago, right? So like that's what people need to understand. Like, people didn't even think that we had a football team. So it goes back to, again, it goes back to the core values. It goes back to the messaging. It goes back to blocking and tackling. It goes back to belief, and something that Curt Cignetti had said early on, the first day that he got hired for the job, that flew him in, he comes in there, walking in, he said, it felt like the place had died. He's like, there's dust on the walls, and people were saying like, hey, how Curt was speaking, people were already dismissing him and saying, yeah, that's not going to happen here. He immediately got those people out. He's like, get these people out of here. Right. And so much goodness. I could talk for days on the Indiana transformation, but there is no surprise that they've had the success that they've had with the type of leader that they have there. It starts from the top.
I love it. And starting from the top with you, and consistency of growth, all the way to recognizing opportunities, awareness, intentional focus, things that we talk about. When I think of the responsive companies, the umbrella company, and you think of responsive asset management, responsive home buyers, responsive capital ventures, all of the entities, they really all do fit in a vertical. And I think a lot of times, and this is really, really important for the listeners, JD's about to share a very, very powerful lesson, and I'm going to highlight a couple of really important things. Many people get excited, or you start to make some money, and you start to have opportunities that are actually outside of your expertise, but the creative entrepreneurial mind that you have, JD, it's easy to go, hey, I'm going to go build this over here, right? Or people get excited. Something looks shiny on the other side of town. And you have really stayed inside of a vertical, stayed the course, all the way to what I was blown away by was your team's discipline to say, we acquire, build, maintain, service, own. We've built this portfolio in the state of Indiana that you loved, even though you don't live anymore, in a certain radius in the state of Indiana, in a niche of real estate within those zip codes in Indiana, and you do not deviate. Even if somebody goes, we've got the most amazing property in Phoenix, come buy this in Phoenix, and you're like, hey, Phoenix sounds nice. Phoenix is beautiful. Like, you have stayed in that niche. Why has that been important? How important is it from your perspective to stay in a niche when something's working? I always like saying, if you walk into the kitchen and Christy for Addison and Hayes is making the best chocolate chip cookies in the world, you ain't screwing up mama's recipe, right? So it's like, so many people want to screw up the chocolate chip cookie recipe by throwing in something that doesn't belong. Why has it been so important? baking chocolate chip cookies, running a business. Why is it important to stay in the niche, build inside your verticals, but have that laser focus?
Yeah, so I'll lead with this. I've had to learn this lesson the hard way, and I think many entrepreneurs can relate to this. We're all guilty of it. We like shiny objects. It's just how we're wired, right? So after realizing trying to chase 10 different things at the same time doesn't really net you the results that you would like to have, learning that the hard way, both with time and money, of course, losing money, do that. I learned that those lessons the hard way. And what I say to my team all the time is clarity drives action, action drives execution, execution gets you results. You can't, with you trying to spread yourself so thin, you can't ever build the confidence you need to get clear on where you want to go. And then more importantly, to drive the action, right? And so for us, because we're so dialed in to the 10th degree of what we're doing, crystallizing what that looks like, we can move exponentially faster because we know exactly where, what we do good, where we're good, where we're not good, where we struggle, where we win, where our strengths are. By having that SWOT analysis performed, it just allows us to move at speeds that most competitors can't even come close to matching us on. So now you create a competitive advantage, right? Because when you start to compound that, now you're getting large data sets to come in. So now we're basing our decisions not just off of intuition or gut, we're actually basing it off of data because we can source large amounts of data faster because we're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So it's a constant feedback loop. And so we're looking at that process constantly, like what can we do to get a little bit better? Regardless of the outcome, there's always something to learn. Right. And so being able to get more data in gives us more clarity of where we're strong, where we're weak, where we need to improve, what we need to tweak. And so that amount of reps, the volume of reps, when you stay, that linear focus just puts you in a league of your own. Right. And so we could have went 10 layers deeper into our criteria. And that's the truth. Like that's how dialed in our playbook is. We say no 100 times before we say yes. Right. And so that's just something that, again, I had to learn the very hard way. So I wasn't always good at this in terms of like dialing in. But after experiencing what doesn't work, I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. And then, the thing is success leaves clues. You go to the Nick Sabans, you go to the Warren Buffetts, you go to these people that have had they're masters at their craft. They were always really good about staying in their lane. Right. And so that's just something that I started to recognize, started to implement. Once you start to implement that further, you get more success. It builds more confidence. It gives you more momentum, and the rest is history.
I love it. This is really why I was attracted to really just through coaching, right? Through working on you and challenging you and pushing you and targeting additional growth for you as a leader. It's why I came to you and asked the question, tell me more about what it would look like for Amy and I to actually be a part of what you guys are doing, which I think is a really welcoming opportunity with Responsive Capital Ventures. Now, I do want to say this before I share this. I have to preface so I can be protected here. I am no longer a financial advisor, okay? I sold my practice in 2012. I turned off my investment licenses. I turned off my insurance licenses so that I would not have a conflict of interest in my work. So do not contact me for advice on anything that JD does. But I will say this, if you are interested after I share what I'm about to share in learning more about JD's work, about Responsive Capital Ventures, he is, no pun intended, one of the most responsive individuals. So we're going to make it very easy for you to reach out to JD. I think you'll enjoy a conversation. It's for specific individuals looking for specific things when it comes to investing. But I want to share my perspective. I just want to share my perspective because I think it's important. Knowing what I know, having been a former financial advisor, you reach a point through discipline of saving money where you fill buckets. So everybody listening, whether you're just starting to save money, and if that's the case, a conversation with JD is not for you, okay? Then you reach a point by being very disciplined over long periods of time. Many of you have heard me say, long obedience in the same direction with aggressive patience. You start to fill some of the traditional buckets that are used for investing, and you reach a point in time where you start to say, I need to have some alternative ways to look at things. I need to look at tax mitigation. I need to look at ways that I can have different efficiencies, different opportunities, different safeties with my money, different risk with my money. And that's where Amy and I in our, portfolio from saving money for long periods of time. When I learned about your due diligence, when I learned about your intentional focus, and I'll share a big mistake Amy and I made. I thought getting into real estate was going to be like the coolest thing in the world. Amy and I meet, 20 years ago. I owned a condo. She owned a condo. Let's keep our condos and rent them out. Let's go build a townhouse. And you go and you do all these things. Next thing you know, we've got this real estate portfolio, which did not work. That portfolio did not work. And there's a deck that I needed to put on one of the rental properties for 10 grand. I never stepped on the deck. It was like wasting money. I share all that to say we had an opportunity through Responsive Capital Ventures to now participate in owning real estate again through targeted, intentional focus, researched, data-driven ownership of real estate. Small piece for us, right? I may own just a couple of bedrooms or some sinks and some toilets in these massive buildings, but the point is you've given us an opportunity. Why is it important when people reach a certain point to really lock in the way that you have on niche in your business to investing in things that allow you to maximize tax advantages, but also allow you to maximize and to learn about the non-traditional investments that can really grow wealth?
Yeah, happy to delve into that. And I will lead with as well that, this isn't for everyone. Not everyone should invest in real estate. I think there's a ton of different vehicles out there that are applicable to different people for different reasons, right? And so I think that's important for people to understand. Not everyone should be doing this. Where we tend to do, for us in particular, and where we best serve individuals, when they have reached the point in their career where they're really dialed in and they've mastered what they're good at, right? If they're in the mortgage business, if they own a plumbing company or whatever it may be, doesn't really matter. But they're starting to amass the level of success where they've created good problems, meaning they're maximizing all the normal stuff that you should be doing, the savings and money in your savings account every year. You got proper cash reserves. You're putting money away in your retirement accounts, and you still have spillover. I call it spillover, but you still have the discretionary income to deploy. Those are the individuals that we tend to best serve because they now have what we call good problems, and so they may be faced with 6, 7, sometimes 8-figure tax bills, and it doesn't matter. Ben and I were just talking about this. It doesn't matter how much you make; it's how much you keep. And so it's really hard to get ahead in life if you're giving up 40, 50% of the money that you're making. And so if there's someone listening to this that is experiencing those good type of problems where now they're stroking 6, 7-figure checks to the IRS for taxes, that's great. You've reached a pinnacle that most people will never reach, which is a good spot to be in. But it becomes exponentially more difficult to keep your money as you start to accumulate. And so that's where we can come alongside folks and really help them. And then the other thing I would note is, we're not for everyone. And I tell folks when we turn people down all the time that want to participate with us, we're not always a good fit for people. And the folks that we tend to do the best work with have realized, or we help them realize, that real estate is not passive. Anyone that tells you that is lying to you. I promise you, they are a guru. They're selling you something. They got a course or a program to sell you. I don't sell any of that. I tell you the truth because I've done it and I'm continuing to do it. I'm an operator. It can be passive if you're truly in a passive seat, but most people they get distracted and they're gonna like what Ben had done early on is where he went and purchased his own property on his own, and now he's fielding property management calls, clogged toilets, roof needs replaced. Here we are, been super successful, and then next thing you know, he's over here dealing with this real estate investment that's not paying his bills yet by any means. And so we tend to do better with folks that realize that in order to do anything at a meaningful level requires an immense level of investment, both from a time and money perspective, but it requires intentional focus. Everything that we started this conversation on. And so if you're finding that you're really getting your stride in where you're at and what you're doing, we would love to talk with you. We feel like we can do a lot of good work with those people.
JD, thank you for your example. Thank you for your diligence. Thank you for your consistent commitment to you and to your team, which impacts so many individuals like our family, to so many individuals that watch your example and how you show up, and most especially to your family. I admire the balance of your life, the time you spend with your kids, the time that you spend with Christy, always wanting to be inclusive of family. For everybody to realize the example that you but in your personal life. So thank you for being that example. And to everybody listening, I hope you realize that JD has remained a consistent example of what happens when you stay connected to your burn. That entrepreneurial spirit, from a lemonade stand to an automotive business to those first real estate endeavors to where you are now, it is that long obedience in the same direction with aggressive patience. So thank you for your discipline. Thank you for staying connected to your burn. And thank you for joining us on The Burn.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben.
To each and every single one of you listening, this is what I love, right? It's the deep relationships that go beyond coaching. It's iron sharpens iron. Lean in on your relationships. Lean in on your opportunities to live to your standards. Lean in on your opportunities to live to your core values. Lean into your opportunities to stay and have the discipline to be in the verticals, to be in the niche over long periods of time, to drive success that JD Crowell is an example of. I love every single week the opportunity to bring you stories of the burn, recognizing why and purpose is not enough. It's that burn that ignites the why and purpose and causes us to show up on the days we don't feel like it, and especially after we win. This has been The Burn, and we'll see you next week.